Hello and welcome to another edition of On the Town. I'm Don Mackey. Special edition today. I have members of the town's Opioid Education Awareness Committee here to talk about a very important and troubling development, as you may have heard in the news recently, of the widespread problem with opioids, heroin addiction, and overdose in statewide. Last fall, former Governor Patrick declared a public health emergency to address the growing problem of abuse and addiction in communities across the Commonwealth. And on December 21st, State Police Superintendent Tim Albin issued a statement citing 58 suspected opiate or heroin-related deaths statewide in the 20 days since December 1st. Albin emphasized that opioid abuse occurs in every kind of community, in every part of the Commonwealth, every day. And just in the past 2 weeks, Governor Charlie Baker, Attorney General Maura Healey have said plainly that addressing opioid abuse is a top priority for their new administrations. You've seen the TV news stories of big drug busts and the video of plastic bags full of pills, cocaine, and heroin that end up on the streets in communities up and down the I-91 corridor in neighborhoods that you probably avoid. What you probably don't know is that in the past 3 years, opioid addiction has resulted in the deaths of 11 individuals from East Longmeadow. Since 2002, that number is 19. The number of overdoses resulting in life-threatening emergencies is much, much higher. These are young people between 20 and 34 years of age who lived in our community, went to our schools, worked in local jobs, suffered from addiction, and died way too young. What you won't see on the TV news are the kids in the local supermarket parking lot buying and selling OxyContin and Percocet, opiate drugs routinely prescribed to adults for pain from back injuries, surgical procedures, and cancer treatment. It's often prescribed to teenagers themselves for pain from athletic injuries, and the number of stories of that leading to addiction is frightening. More and more, it finds its way into the stream of substances available to suburban kids just looking for a kick or relief from anxiety or depression or escape from troubles with school, peers, or home life. It's a class of drugs that will lead quickly and ruthlessly to addiction and very likely to street heroin, which is cheaper, deadlier, and in more plentiful supply. This program is an attempt to reframe the story of opioid addiction out there that makes the news stories, to reflect on the reality that these substances are here, posing a deadly threat to the youth in this community. It's past time to begin a conversation about understanding and confronting that threat, and here to talk about how to do that are Doug Mellis, Chief of the East Longmeadow Police Department, Kelly LeBombard, Nurse Leader for the East Longmeadow Public Schools, Don Cavanaugh, East Longmeadow Police Department School Resource Officer based here at the high school, Ann Haskell, Birchland Park Middle School nurse, Sergeant Jeff D'Alessio, East Longmeadow Police Department, Diana Gomes, school counselor at Birchland and chair of the town's Opioid Education Awareness Committee, Mr. Gordon Smith, superintendent of East Longmeadow Public Schools. Unable to join us today is Task Force member Marie Graves, the project director for the Springfield Coalition of Opioid Overdose Prevention, called SCOOP, an initiative of the Springfield Department of Health and Human Services. And finally, I want to welcome Mr. Sean Sullivan, a senior here at East Longmeadow High School who knows about drug abuse firsthand. Sean's story is his particular story, and he's determined to share it with people, not because it authenticates our conclusions about teen drug use, but because it challenges them. His courage and candor provide hope for the whole community, that we might choose to listen and learn to understand and support the work that needs to be done to spare more young people and their families the pain, loss, and grief of substance abuse and addiction. Thank you all very much for coming, and again, especially Sean, thanks for being here. Before you tell your story, I'd like to ask Diana to give people information about this important community event that's coming up on February 25th.
This committee has been working since last year to be able to come up with ways that we can educate our community about the growing issue with opioid-related deaths. And one of the things that we've done is start this committee, and we have a parent night that we are hoping that this community will be involved in and will participate. And it is called the Youth Safety Parent Night. It will be February 25th at Birchland Park from 6 to 8:30. And it'll consist of an informational evening about the risks of drug and alcohol abuse, but also prevention and treatment. So the evening will start off with welcoming parents into the cafetorium at Birchland Park, and it'll be introducing them to the speakers of the evening and letting them know what an important and serious topic this is that we need to start discussing and talking about as a community. We want parents to feel comfortable coming out and knowing that the reason we're doing this is to raise awareness, but to offer support and to let them know that they could be struggling and dealing with some of these issues in their own home, whether it's with their children or within their family. And we want to offer support to the community. So one of the first speakers that we will have that evening is going to be the East Long Meadow Police Department, along with a representative from the DA's office. And they're going to be focusing on raising awareness about drug and substance abuse, and also about prevention. And the DA's office would also like to educate families on not only consequences or prosecution issues, but really that there's a lot of help out there and a lot of support. And I know that the goal also for the East Long Meadow Police Department that they'll be sharing is to know that they're here to help and they're here to support the community, and not to worry about what's going to happen if they have to call for their assistance, and when they show up, what will the consequences be for their child or their family member. They're going to be there that night to let the community know that they're here to help. We're also going to have a speaker from a local pediatrician, and possibly along with some of our school nurses or staff, discussing how to keep your children safe at home from prescription and medication, and how to educate them on the misuse of prescriptions and medications. We often have medications in our home that we are no longer using, and sometimes we're not sure how to dispose of them. If we're taking medication, it's really important to know how to store your medication, to keep track of what you currently have in the house. And that presenter will be talking about ways that parents can start the conversation with their children about it, but also precautions that they can take within their own home. And also treatment options if somebody that they know is struggling with abuse. And then lastly, we're also going to have Marie Graves, who will be talking to parents about risk and protective factors and ways to keep your children safe, other ways to get them involved in the community, and also support groups for families, other treatment options, and really just letting parents know the things that they need to know about the opioid crisis. What is an opiate? What does that mean? What are the ways that families can be suffering from this? How it starts, where it can end up. So it's a really important informational night that I'm really hoping this community will show up for. And I'm hoping mostly that when families hear about this evening, that it won't be, my kid's doing great and this is not something that I have to worry about, something that it's not affecting our family. I think as a community, whether or not this is something that you're dealing with and that's happening in your family, or whether or not you know of somebody who's dealing with it, I think we all need to be part of this discussion. I think we all need to be there to show our support, because I think it's a difficult conversation to have, and I think that families who are suffering are really uncertain about where to get help. And could really have reservations about wanting to speak about it publicly or sharing their story with others. That's why I really commend Sean for being here today and sharing his story with us. And I think that we need to start doing more of that. So I really hope that that evening people will make time to be able to join us. And we've arranged to have childcare that evening, so if that's a concern. We have school counselors at Birchland Park, and we have our peer leadership group that's going to be in guidance that evening, welcoming parents and taking in children. They'll have activities prepared for them that evening. So if that's a concern, I want you to know that you have somebody there who will watch over them while we are meeting. But I'm really hoping that we will all be there as a community and that you will make the absolute most effort to join us, because you will learn a lot and things that you might have not been thinking about. And regardless, like I said, of if it's affecting your family or not, there's signs that you can pick up on, things that you can be educated on to help other families, whether it's your children or your children's friends and their family. So I hope to see everybody there.
Great, thank you. I just want to follow up. I think the important thing, and we've talked about this at this table, this committee, the people sitting here, and the people immediately working with us are not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is the community. We're here to make that happen. Nothing happens if people don't participate in this process. And, you know, Diane, I think you make a great point. That includes people who maybe they don't have a problem.
Yep.
But we need their support and their insight, and, you know, even if it's just somebody to turn to. So we're really here begging you to understand the seriousness of this problem and plan to attend this event. All right.
If I may add to that, the hope would be that this is just the start of the discussion. Not only this program, but the 25th begins the discussion, that it's not an informational night and everybody goes back to their lives and the topic's over. That it begins the discussion, and I know that Diana, has, with the committee, has worked on how we gain questions and topics that people might be interested in seeing in future events. So that's going to be exciting if we can get that to be a catalyst for future events.
Right. I can kind of piggyback a little bit of part of what we're going to be doing this evening is after parents have had a chance to see all three presentations, at the end of the presentations, it'll be more of a breakout session where we break parents up into groups and they rotate amongst each session. So they get to hear from each presenter, and at the end of the evening, they will have an evaluation form that they'll be filling out about how the evening went, what they liked about the evening, what they wish that they could have heard more about, any topics that they're curious about, and that will help us to be able to plan something else, hopefully in April, where we can have a discussion panel and have people whose lives have been affected by drug and substance abuse be able to share their story. Not only them, but also professionals in the community, counselors, therapists, local resources such as sober houses, and the people who are running these homes to be able to offer that support. So our goal is to start by having this discussion and trying to raise awareness, and then be able to follow up with other events such as another community night with a panel of speakers who are sharing their stories. So I'm hoping this is just the beginning.
All right, Sean, you got a story to tell.
So I guess to start off, I'll just say that even when I was younger, I always felt sort of just not different, but I was always very observant of people. I was always sort of not down on myself, but even teachers had noticed in the hallways and such, I would walk with my head down. And that sort of set something up for me where I sort of, once again, I felt different, but I knew I wasn't totally out there. I fit in because people liked me, and I came from a family that had not money, but we lived in a nice enough house to get that reputation that we should be perfect. With a nuclear family, we're great. And there's a very strong history of bipolar disorder within my family, And around the age of 14, I started seeing a therapist due to some risk behavior I was taking myself into around the age of, once again, 14. And I was diagnosed with bipolar. I shortly after was put on medications, and in this period of time, I had originally experimented with marijuana, and I had also began to cope with self-harm. Shortly after that, I had made a suicide attempt that landed me in Providence Hospital for about a week, and I was at the Joshua Center in Enfield, Connecticut for probably a few months after that, recovering. And over at the Joshua Center, I met kids from all sorts of backgrounds. It wasn't just kids who had attempted suicide. It was kids who had problems with drugs or just in general couldn't be comfortable at their home environment. And I met a lot of interesting people there, and they sort of gave me not peer pressure, but there was this general vibe that these people were like me, and I was grouped up with them, and they enjoyed all sorts of stuff that I had never touched before. They talked about, as we're here for it, opioids, all sorts of psychedelic drugs, and that sort of sparked my interest because I had felt I was put into that group. And so after getting out of the Joshua Center, I began experimenting with prescription drugs that I honestly probably didn't even know what they were at the time, that often had harsh side effects for days afterwards. And eventually I ended up trying psilocybin mushrooms, also known as magic mushrooms, that give a hallucinogenic effect. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was spiritual at the time because I was so lost as far as the bipolar, overcoming self-harm, and I felt like I was a certain type of person that had to go down this path. I felt that something was going to draw me towards it because that was the type of person I was. And after I had originally tried them, the mushrooms, I did it one more time the night before Mother's Day, and I didn't even realize Mother's Day was the next day. And I had woken up in the morning at my friend's house after taking them. I went outside, I smoked a cigarette, and I came back inside, and I was walking past my friend's mom in the kitchen, and I passed out. I hit my head on a chair, and I suffered from a seizure for about 10 to 15 seconds, and I had never experienced anything like that before. And it shook me because I realized at that point that my problem wasn't just affecting me. On Mother's Day, I had ruined it entirely for my mother. I even had to call out of work, which was also very unfortunate because my boss was relying on me. And I sort of let everyone down in a sense. And that was when I realized I had to get my act straight. And ever since then, I've been working on just getting better in general. I'm completely sober now. I haven't touched alcohol or anything, at least within the past 6 months. And now I feel like the idea is I'm recovered, and I really want to help other people recover. It's something I'm interested in. That's why I'm here. I like using my story as something to bounce off of and help other people because I want them to see that even if you get to that lowest point, you can still come back from that. You can always come back from that. Even if you don't have the people that you think are supporting you, you can find a way back because there will be people always willing to help you. You have to look for help, though. You have to be ready to accept it. And that's about my story.
Helps you.
Do you agree that sharing your story is part of your recovery?
Absolutely. I think it's 100% necessary to hear other people's experiences and know that you're not alone in that.
What are some of the things that have helped you to be able to get sober? Have you met anybody, like support groups, or an AA, or meetings, or a sponsor?
I've never actually done anything overly official as much as I've got a weird support group in a way. I don't want to say I completely helped myself because, of course, there were people around, but it was more from within, if you get what I'm saying. I had people to talk to, but I had to realize what I did was wrong. And you have to introspect to get past something like that. You have to think about what you're actually doing, because your actions don't seem to have consequences sometimes in your head, but in the long run they do.
So what would you say to the community? I mean, you made a really interesting point, and we had talked about this the other day, of feeling that once you made the decision to explore those things, found yourself at the Joshua Center, that you pretty much felt like that was what defined you at that point, and that the community then defined you as that, and that made it that much harder. What would you say to this East Long Meadow community to get them to understand? I mean, we're not trying to solve the issue tonight, but what do you want them to understand about why they need to be involved, and how they need to be involved maybe differently than they are?
Well, I'd say that you really have to know that shaming someone out of doing drugs, or just shoving the facts in their face, or suspecting them of doing something without them even actually doing it, such as accusing your kids of hanging out with the wrong people, all of a sudden they get this thought in their head, I guess. It's just an idea that they're with that group now and that they're part of that. And I think the best thing to do is realize that someone who was an addict at one point isn't always going to be an addict. If they have the right people, they're not going to fall back into that. It's not something you're cursed with. It's not something you're stuck with. It's something you're labeled with, and you have to understand and treat those people with the respect that you would give anyone else, because treating them as lessers isn't going to help them recover. And the only thing that we should really want for those people is to recover.
Absolutely.
So, Ann, talking about kids, as you were 14, this happened when?
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Are you still in middle school?
During my self-harm issues, yes, and when I first experienced smoking marijuana. But none of the harder stuff really hit me till probably the summer after that, or once I got into the high school.
Had you witnessed it with anyone else prior to using it yourself? Do you have friends or family that maybe?
As hard as it is to say this, my family has always had a history of not alcoholism as much as it is. No, it is alcoholism. I hate to put it in something so simple, but I've seen a lot of people suffer through a lot of stuff, and I've seen the way that they cope with it. And it's funny because a kid tries to not be like their parent. They try to differ from them, and they end up doing something so similar, but just ever so slightly different, and they think they're rebelling. I guess seeing that, though, seeing my parents have, not my parents, it's the whole family. I actually had an uncle who passed last year of a heroin overdosage, and he had a history of issues with painkillers, and I only sort of knew about it. And I felt like, not that I necessarily was at more risk than other people, but that there was a chance that I was gonna be exactly like my parents, or exactly like my uncle, or exactly like... It feels like a curse in some ways. I'm not superstitious at all, but you feel like it's something you're bound to. And it's really not, and a lot of people don't get that.
Can I just ask you, is there anything, anyone, like in the school and in the community, in your home, anything anyone could have done to help prevent you from going on that path?
I'd say the one thing that probably would have helped me the most is if sorry, this is a tough one. Give me a second.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Sean, when you made that decision not to do it anymore,
Yeah.
that turning point in your
Yeah.
life, you admit that that's you decided that, and not
Yeah.
everybody else talking to you or working with people. But there was people involved in your life that make you see the light, so to speak, and it kept you in the process of making that decision. But you agree that that decision for most people that are in your position, it's going to have to come within themselves, correct?
Absolutely, you have to want to make that change.
Right.
That's something that you have to realize. You might tell yourself that it's not up to you. You expect people to come and help you, but that's not always life. It's sort of a sad truth in a way. You're not always going to have a support system, but when there's one standing right there, is often the time we don't accept it. But knowing that you've denied it in the past, you continue to deny it in a way. Or if it was never there before, you're going to continue to deny it because you say, I was fine without that, so why do I need it? Even if you're not actually fine, you think, I'm dealing with it my own way.
But you made that decision yourself. When there's
Oh,
one particular
absolutely.
thing that you said, that somebody said in your past that stuck, came to light that day, because this night out that we have planned is like you said, support and maybe to keep you in the game, so to speak, as these people go through their problems in life, and hopefully that they know that they can turn to certain people to keep them going down the road in a hopefully straight and narrow path.
Mm.
But give you yourself that opportunity to make that decision on your own, which you agree everybody has to make before they actually change. So that night we have planned is to have those support people there to talk to individuals that may have a problem or know a family member that has one, and hopefully they will have knowledge and pass out to those who are affected by it, and maybe the light bulb will go off at that time for those that are affected. Because we never know when that day is going to come. Did you know that particular day was going to come?
Absolutely not. I didn't think it was, I thought at the time that it was not a good decision, but that there was going to be no repercussions, and I was really wrong. And it becomes clear to you after it's happened that it was the catalyst that changed everything when I was making bad decisions. You need just that one moment, whether it's something someone said or something that you've done or something that you realize. You need that one moment to make that change. And I think that a support system or just anyone reaching out to you can be that person. You can make that change no matter how small the gesture is. Sometimes it'll just cause something to click in that person's head.
Can I ask you a question? You're talking about support systems, which are incredibly impactful for so many people. But if I can take you back in your story where you were talking about how different groups you were in at that moment you felt were defining you.
Yeah.
Are there structures or elements in school that either help that or hurt that? In terms of, because I'm assuming, as all our students go through the grades and are maturing, they're searching for who they are, and obviously we know about sort of the age-old idea of peer pressure, and as you search for who you are, you take certain risks. I'd just be interested in, as you look back, are there structures in school that contributed to that, where maybe you were mistakenly defining yourself in such a way, or helped with that?
I definitely say that the people I was surrounding myself with when I first started making bad decisions. Definitely weren't the best, but that was, once again, returning to the whole idea of labeling someone after doing something. If you put that around them, it also sort of puts it on all their friends, because people go, oh, it doesn't matter if your friend's doing something bad, you're going to look bad. So you get that label by association very quickly. I had a friend who started experimenting with various things, probably 7th or 8th grade, and he had come from a bad background in general. He saw a lot of drug abuse within his family and alcohol abuse within his family. And the minute he got labeled, it was either I stopped hanging out with him, my best friend since I was 5, or I just sort of stick around and keep that on my shoulders. And I think at the time I was thinking, hey, it's a group of kids, they're all very nice to me, I doubt they're going to make me do anything, I trust them, and honestly, it made my parents angry, which sort of fueled it in a way.
At what point did you disclose to your parents that you had this problem?
I think my parents started finding out a lot of this stuff when I was at the Joshua Center or at Providence, at least about my early stages of abusing. Because actually the night I had headed to Providence, I was drinking, and my parents approached me about that, and they had previously suspected me of smoking because they knew that one of my friends did. So they always laid that on me. Oh, were you out smoking tonight? No, that wasn't me. And I got that question before I started, so afterwards it was just sort of instinct to continue saying no. I don't want that reputation around me. But my parents found out about all the harder stuff, such as the mushrooms, when the morning of Mother's Day. And it was a shocker to them in a way, because they had thought that I had recovered and that I had gotten past self-harm. But what they didn't realize is I had landed myself in a whole nother problem. And it was sort of a loop, in a sense, because it's one problem to the next. It's one thing. I replaced, I guess, self-harm with drugs, which is something that I feel like a lot of people do. So you do have to realize that even though you don't want to characterize people, you have to realize that certain people who have gone through other things in the past are going to be more likely to do this stuff and more likely to get into drugs.
So as I had asked before.
Yeah.
I know you were thinking.
Yeah.
But I really want to know, is
Yeah.
there something or someone that, was there a way we could have talked to you more or tried to help, make a referral or something earlier before it got as advanced as it did? Like, I know, I'll be honest, I did see you a lot at Birchland.
Yeah.
And so did guidance.
Yeah. I'd have to say that in my situation, I don't think so, only due to the fact is I was really good at hiding it. I feel like because I come off as a very nice and bubbly person.
Definitely.
In general. And I personally, like I said, I don't think there was anything anyone could have really done as far as the school committee went or anything like, or people at the middle school or anything like that. I think it was more something on a personal level. And I feel like someone could have reached out, whether it was a family friend or anyone like that, but I didn't get that because I guess that's just sometimes how it works out.
So, you see a lot of kids.
That's right. Every day.
And we talked a little bit about this, these kids who are frequent flyers. And they're in the nurse's office, and they're not in the nurse's office because they got a headache.
That's
They're in
right.
the nurse's office because they can't deal with being in school.
Exactly.
And I guess there's a question. How many of them are really good at learning the skills to avoid what's difficult for them, whatever that might be? And is anybody at this table, because you see it at the high school, are you as professionals in a position to unpack all that on a daily basis? What do you need to understand that better? Are we communicating the wrong way? Are we looking for the wrong things? Because you're somebody that sort of stepped out of the pattern and said, wait a minute, this is not the way it's supposed to work. And it took you to do that.
Yeah.
And this is why I say to the community, we don't have the solution to this problem. We're sitting around the table learning from you.
Right.
And that's, I think, what has to happen on a long-term basis. So what do either one of you in the school?
Well, I can tell you, when they come frequently, we always start with the parents. I mean, sometimes in the school, before parents do, we make referrals to guidance. Guidance, either adjustment counselor or the guidance counselor, and a lot of times, they would see you too. But then if it was still coming, still issue, like we didn't know, what else you could have been dealing with, whether it was academic, something at home, whatever, then we always go to parents. We always make referrals to the parents to make a referral to the pediatrician. And so that you would go there and at least speak to the pediatrician, make sure there was nothing else medical, wrong, which was bringing you there, whether it was asthma, whether it was headaches, stomach. We always try to rule out the medical first. And then emotional piece would always go kind of to the guidance adjustment counselor to see where we could best help. But past that, we look at our numbers. That's what we were just saying the other day at our meeting. Where do you take it from there? Once we make those referrals, we're hoping you're getting better, but we don't always know. Like you said, you were good at hiding it, and you didn't voice some of those concerns that you were having. When do you think, like you realize, like you said, you started 8th grade, when do you think you really could have said something more? Like you just said, you wish you had family, friends, someone you could have reached out to. Would you have felt comfortable coming to either nurses at school, guidance? Would you have felt comfortable doing that? Or do you think it would have been more on the outside, like family?
Actually, I would expand that question. Was there anybody in the school to whom you felt comfortable
Right.
talking
Teachers,
about?
yeah, anyone.
Anyone.
Coach,
Talking about
anyone,
personal
Anyone.
situations.
I have to say I've always been very close with at least one teacher a year. I seem to find at least one person who I really bond with. And teachers are really good at helping out with that. I feel like it's the people that sometimes you least expect that can reach out to you. So that's always fantastic. But I think if I didn't have the worry of having my parents find out that I was messing up, I would have been a lot more comfortable confronting someone. And while it is true that you won't always confront the parents, of course, if the child's life is in risk.
We have to.
Yeah, exactly. But it's sort of, it's a rock and a hard place. You can't really do much.
And actually, most, if not all, will tell you that. Certainly always willing to listen, but they need to let you know that if something that's going on puts you in danger, we need to alert other people, get other people involved, along with your parents.
Yeah.
Don, do you find it, do you think it's any easier at the high school just because the kids are that much more mature or a little bit more open, or?
I don't want to say that it's easier. I think that the kids may be a little more mature and can recognize things, such as in your case. They can recognize that they're going down the wrong path, or they have some sort of issue that they need to discuss, and they understand deep down inside that there's something wrong. So I think maybe in the middle school, it's maybe a little bit more of observations, per se, where in the high school it certainly has that as a component, but as Sean says in his case, sometimes it's maybe the maturity level of the student to say something's wrong here and I need some help. And I think that may play a role in.
So you're in a sort of a unique position as a resource officer because you're kind of bridging these communities in terms of schools and the health part of it, and the police department. Do you feel like you're helpless, or do you feel like where are you in terms of the tools that you have, knowing that that's out there and being able to recognize it? I think probably some of the time. Do you feel like, yeah, but I don't have half of what I need to solve that, or?
I think my position is, as you say, unique. It allows me to interact with the kids, and I do in the middle school, just not as much because my office is here, but it allows me to interact with the kids, to build rapport with the kids, and to sometimes just establish that relationship with them so that I can understand where they're coming from, whether it's an academic issue or something that's happening at home or something with friends. Having that uniqueness allows me to kind of see the kids from a different angle than, say, a teacher or guidance or nursing staff. I think it's good because I don't have a class to teach. I don't have to worry about MCAS and all that stuff. It allows me to interact with the kids and really get to know them, so that if I do come across something, and again, it's a book of things that I can come across, but I can refer them to our adjustment counselors, our guidance counselors, our administrators, our nurses, and even a teacher. So my position is wonderful in that it gives me the ability to do that. But sometimes it's just the stereotype of me being a police officer that the kids don't want to share that stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been in this position for 9 years, and I could probably write a book on the strange things that kids tell me. And some of the stuff they tell me, I say to myself, I'm so excited that they feel comfortable enough to tell me. Right. And B, I can't believe they told me that. If it's necessary, I will make a phone call. I will walk down to the main office and grab somebody. I've had instances where kids will come down and say, I heard so-and-so is having a party this weekend. And sometimes I look at it from a parental perspective and say, if I was that parent, I'd want a phone call from the police or whoever it is. But my position allows me to take notice of these things as much as I can. And as Sean said, sometimes people just don't pick up on things. Right. Would it be helpful to have more school resource officers? Maybe one in the middle school that could kind of bridge that. I think so, but that comes down to manpower and budgets and stuff like that. So I feel that the relationships that I have with the school administrators, the school counselors, and all those professionals are so great that I can have conversations with them should I feel it necessary with the kid being at risk at whatever level.
We've really been focusing here on school, and I think that that's good, because really the point of this event is really how do we as a community deal with this in terms of preventing or fending off this risk for our youth. The problem itself is much bigger than that, and I think a lot of what's in the press and the news these days deals with the bigger issues. So Chief, I was wondering, sort of start at the 50,000 foot level in terms of other chiefs, other communities are dealing with this. what are you talking about? And
Well, before I get into that, Don, if I could just ask Sean, do you think we're on target what we're trying to do here in February? Do you think this is something that we're going to get moms and dads out there or people to listen to? It's not like pie in the sky. These aren't things and numbers and items that we're dreaming about.
Yeah.
And it's not just because it's happening in other communities. Do you feel it's happening here? Do you have an idea or?
I feel like we have a lot of the building blocks to lead to a bigger problem. And I think that the best way to prevent that is to get everyone to come together and find a way to prevent that before it happens. Because honestly, getting rid of the problem before it starts is the most efficient way to do it. Because if that did become a problem, it would become more widespread more quickly, and we would also have to work a lot harder to get past it and to prevent it. So it is good that people know and come learn about it and understand basically just all the basic information, what's necessary and what's going to help the community as a whole and also their families.
Thank you. To answer your question, Don, it's like you read, Timmy Alvin cited those deaths since December 1st. We've had our share throughout our community. This whole group goes back to, and I just went back on my notes earlier, our event's scheduled for February 25th, and it was February 24th that Sergeant Jeff DeLessio and Sergeant Manley and I went up to Greenfield for a opium crisis meeting at Greenfield Community College. A lot of it goes to the squeaky wheel. The squeaky wheel gets the grease to quiet things down. Greenfield took a bull by the horns and demanded and received representation, received money, because it is an epidemic. There is a crisis out there. We're talking about narcotic drugs. We've, for the last 3 years, Jeff, twice a year, February and October, we've joined with the Drug Enforcement Agency to take prescription drugs off the street as a source to get rid of them. Excess of 100+ pounds.
Yep.
So if you think the docs are really prescribing right numbers or wrong numbers, granted some of these could be other types of drugs other than heavy narcotic drugs, but you know, there's drugs out there. There's drugs available that people can get their hands on that's already been prescribed, maybe not for them, but it's within the households. Chief down in Dedham, Mike Del Monte, probably said it best in an article in the Globe last week. This is a situation that we are not going to arrest our way out of. And I think that kind of sums it up. You know, there's actions that we're going to take on the criminal justice side through the DA's office and everything else. But there's also, I'm human. I can understand hurt and pain and suffering. You can see it in the parents in some cases, kids that we've been involved with over the years, and sometimes to the parents themselves. A loved one, their wife or husband inadvertently became addicted to drugs. We've seen it in law enforcement. We've seen recently in an area department where what he did was wrong, but he was addicted through a surgery procedure. So there's understanding on our part, and I think our message that we want to get out is that we want to help, we want to be involved, and the only way we can be involved is if we hear it from you. Yeah, we may find it on our own, but talk to us. That's what we're here for. We're communications. We've got to work together to resolve the issues, and I think this is a golden opportunity for all of us in this town to sit down, listen to what the problems are. We've tried to develop a network in place. I came here 10 years ago, and one of the first things we did was to institute a school resource program. It's been successful. I hope it continues on. Yes, manpower is an issue. I'd love to have one in every school in town, but realistically and financially, I don't see that happening.
Right.
But again, Sean, it's we're not the boogeyman. We're here to help. If you have a question, come to us, and we'll try to do the best we can.
And I think that's an important message that both kind of rest our way out of this. I don't know if I'll use word out the boogeyman, but
Detention.
that theme is a way that I think we as a school system need to continue that theme, because certainly we are often, as I was an assistant principal and a principal, we're often on the other side of the table. It's not an arrest, but now you're dealing with a suspension or an expulsion, and it's much better for all of us if we can be on this side of the table. But it takes more communication, and so maybe that's part of the message that we get out as we start, the Youth Safety Night on the 25th, that we can do more productive, positive things if we can be on this side of the table with people. It doesn't mean that any of us are able not to do our job. The police have to enforce the law, and we have to enforce school rules, but it doesn't mean that with communication that we can't be there to assist and support.
It was interesting last night. I was at the governor, or not the governor, I was at the Attorney General's installation at Faneuil Hall in Boston. And as you know, we have a new Republican governor and lieutenant governor. And they were front and center. They were there at her installation. And Maura Healey stood up probably about 5 minutes into her speech, or maybe less, and talked about the loss of people that she knew, stories that she's read in the media, of a nurse that got addicted and lost her life, of a young athlete who overdosed in, I don't know if she passed or just overdosed on a pain drug that she was taking. And she aptly said, as quoted in the paper and the news media, that I stand with you, you're not alone. Right. And as soon as she said that, the governor stood. So there's an understanding, there's a relationship. So there's opportunity here to go light years from where we've been. Governor Patrick had given $20 million. I don't know where it was. I saw nothing in our area that I'm aware of. And a lot of the cost that's going to be involved, and you said it yourself, Sean, with the treatment you received. It's not just 30 days and there's a bink, okay, you make it to April 1st, you're cured. It's not. It's a lifelong event. And in some cases, it's up to a year for hospitalization and to get people healthy again, get them going. And again, it's lifelong. So I think it's a golden opportunity for us in our community throughout the Commonwealth to try to get things going and know that we have leadership in place that's going to be supportive.
I mean, just your treatment, what does that entail? I mentioned, how hard is it just for a parent to get a visit with a mental health provider?
Exactly. So that's why we have to stay current with the resources, because some come and go. I mean, Ann and I were just looking at Brattleboro. Brattleboro Retreat is, 45 minutes away? And what did they serve? Ages?
4 to 18.
4 to 18. I think it's harder with the older population, like when you're in your 20s. But I think that's how Marie Graves is going to be a great resource to us, because she knows what facilities are out there. Do they have a bed? Just telling families what they can do, where they can get support. There's support groups for parents. Learn to Cope runs a couple times a week at the Providence Hospital for parents. Diana talked about AA meetings. They run everywhere. We just need to get a current resource list available so that we know that these are places that are available to parents and kids.
And we'll give that out on February 25th.
Well, thank you, Kelly. So I'm going to ask again that the community make a point to please turn out for this very important event, February 25th, Birchland Park Middle School. There'll be more publicity about it. But again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thanks especially to Sean. And thank you for watching this edition of On the Town. I'm Don Mackey. Goodbye.